Hola amigos, welcome to another edition of Yazzie Speaks the Truth. Today I am going to talk about, or I want to, talk about the Katt Williams Mexican rant. That's what they're calling it. He had a comedy show. I'm a little late, but that's okay. He had a comedy show in, I think, September 2011. And there was a Mexican guy in the audience who jumped up in the middle of Katt Williams' comedy show and was like, F America, and I'm not lying. You need to watch the clip and actually see. And we can't see the whole thing, so we really don't know what happened before that point. But the thing is that this particular Mexican guy, this Mexicano, he was not like an average Mexican person. He looked like he had the bandana and he was all, he was a thug gangbanger cholo. Like, so anyways, he jumps up out of nowhere and says, F America, But the point before we even get into that is, this guy was sitting all the way up front. If you know anything about shows, about, big performances, if it's not free, which most of the time it's not, if you're sitting up front, you paid a lot of money. So that says, one, that this guy knows who Katt Williams is. And two, Katt Williams, probably his biggest audience, maybe even before black people, but one of his biggest audiences are Mexicans. So, and people were really mad, talking about Katt Williams took it too far, and he was, he's a racist against Mexicans, and no, that is not the case. Katt Williams is a comedian. He takes the most basic arguments, the most, basic everyday situations, and makes it look foolish, makes it look silly. That's his job. That's what he does. Like, he talks a lot of stuff for a living, and people love it, but what had happened, I mean, come on, this is Katt Williams' show, and you're gonna stand up in the middle of his show, and because you don't like something that he says, you're gonna shout out, F America. And Katt Williams' argument was that he was being pro-American. And, I don't know if he was necessarily being pro-American. He was being pro-Katt Williams, like pro-Katt, this is my show, I run this type thing. But he wasn't being anti-Mexican. He was not. If you know anything about him, that's his biggest audience. Like, why would Mexicanos love him so much if that's how he was? So anyways, this guy, if you watch it closely, the guy is flashing Katt Williams like, he's putting up his middle finger, and he keeps saying, first he says F America, now he's transferring over to, F you Katt Williams, and he calls him, the N-word several times. And Katt Williams is hot, and he should be. It's his show, and so if you listen, Katt Williams, now, because this guy has gotten up and disturbed his show, this gentleman, he ain't even a gentleman, but whatever, becomes the show. And I'm sure if anybody got up in the middle of it, he would. And actually, this also happened in Cincinnati, and it wasn't a Mexican or Latino, and he was like, it was in Cincinnati. You should watch the clip, and it says, Katt Williams gets in a fight live in Cincinnati, and He was like, oh, they should see this, that is not a Mexican. But anyway, so this guy, the Mexican guy, going back to, it was in Phoenix, Arizona, this guy is constantly saying things, and he was like, you have no idea what my people did for your country, and he was like, you have no idea what my people did for your country, because he was talking about how we were slaves and everything. And then the guy, said, I don't know if this is in the right order, but then he said, this is Mexico, homie, or whatever. And Katt Williams is like, no, this was Mexico. It's now Arizona. This is Phoenix, So it has, if you're Mexican and you're offended, I mean, to a certain extent, I can completely understand. I can understand you're not being unreasonable, but at the same time, you have to understand that this is not just an average person. This is a comedian, and literally, he is a fool. Whatever comes out of his mouth comes out of his mouth. And he did an interview on CNN with TJ, and TJ was like, you know, whole time TJ had his eyebrow up like, I'm such a fan and I'm familiar with their comedy, but don't you think you took it a little too far? And Katt Williams kept saying, and TJ was looking at him like he's crazy. But really, when a situation deals with race, you really need to, you have to look at both sides, because if you don't, you're gonna be infuriated. But Katt Williams kept saying, I cannot apologize for this. This is what I do. You know, he was like, I give the people my uncensored thought process. My uncensored thought process. So the first thing that he's a fool. Like, don't you remember when you were in elementary school, the bullies, once you said something, they would shoot back and everybody would be like, oh, that's what Katt Williams is professionally. You know, so he was just like, I cannot apologize for what I said uncensored, because he understands that what he said was not, it was against this particular person, and everybody else was laughing, you know. And I can guarantee you that was in Phoenix, Arizona. Nobody else, no other Mexican jumped on that stage. They were laughing because they heard this guy and they knew that he was saying inappropriate things, and he was probably drunk anyway. But anyway, on CNN he was saying that, and TJ was looking at him like he was crazy. But if you're Mexicana, he was not directly shooting towards you, or he wasn't being racist at all, I promise you. And then he also said, Katt Williams on the CNN interview, he also said, you know, apology, that's for the Tracy Morgans of the world. And if you're familiar with Tracy Morgan, I think one of his more recent movies he played, was it Sunday or something, like he and I think Ice Cube, you know, robbed the church. But anyway, when Tracy Morgan has done stand-up in the past, he got a whole lot of heat, and he should have, because he was out of line. He went on a what they call homophobic rant, and he was saying that, you know, if his son told him he was gay, that he would stab him to death. And then he also said at a football game, excuse my language, but this is what Tracy Morgan said, that Sarah Palin was good masturbation material. And so it's like, when he comes out, he says these things that are literally offensive and totally inappropriate. And then also, if you think back, a lot of people were comparing the Kramer thing. See, the thing is, I hate when people do this. Please, por favor, do not compare something to something else that is totally not relevant. Kramer off Seinfeld, and when I watched it again, I was like, Kramer, when he got on that stage, the guy from Seinfeld, when he got on that stage and he did that racist rant, or whatever they called it, you know, it's always a rant, and it was, because he was just going off talking about something. 50 years ago, we would have hung you up on a tree, and no, you would have been upside down with a fork in your, you know, behind. And he was talking about, he kept yelling the N-word, and it wasn't with an A at the end, and he was like, nigga, with the E-R. It was so terrible, and he was just like, really? Talking about 50 years ago, we would have had you on a tree hanging upside down with a fork in your behind? And people were actually laughing, and my heart hurt, y'all. Like, you know, so I can understand if a Mexican first watched it, you know, but then he kept going, and I guess a black guy in the audience stood up, and he was like, that was uncalled for. This is Kramer. And Kramer was like, you know, da-da-da-da, and he was like, oh, that's what happens when you interrupt the white man. Like, what in the world, Kramer? Like, what? I think he was drunk. But I think that's different. I think that's a little different. I think that's different. He was just going on this crazy rant, and it wasn't geared towards it. He was just shouting it out about black people. But Katt Williams was doing his thing, doing his show, and out of nowhere, this guy jumps up and is like, F America. And Katt Williams was also saying, which is true, it's true, that we are not allowed to go around, as Americans, we're not allowed to parade around and make those kinds of comments, because that's like fighting words. That's not. And so he was saying, if you love Mexico so much, go back. Because he was basically saying, when this guy stood up and said F America, Katt Williams was basically saying, well, if you don't like America that much and you're not American, you know, then go back to Mexico. And he knows that he wouldn't. That's why people were like, oh, you know, so please don't take it like all Mexicans go back to Mexico. He didn't even say that. He did not even say that. He directed it towards that one rude cholo dude. Anyway, love you guys. I hope that, you know, you understand what I'm saying. But anyway, peace out.